funny thing about Standing Rock, it happened up in North Dakota, and Standing Rock is the name of a reservation up there. Energy Transfer Partners were trying to push through a pipeline, and this is the tail end of that same pipeline.
Energy Transfer Partners began its pipeline in North Dakota, and now it wants to end it here in Louisiana and bring all of its dirty oil down through our state and then export it.
The pipeline actually went through North Dakota. It goes down through Illinois over to Texas. The part from Lake Charles to St. James, which is on the Mississippi River, that is what's being built, and that's what we're trying to stop.
Y'all are on private property. You have no right coming through here. This ain't your land.
You're all trespassing. If you don't want to go, you better go.
We're not trespassing.
We're here in Southwest Louisiana on property that was purchased through private donations, and our hope for the land here was to create a just transition space for people. We are trying to hopefully give examples and opportunities for people to engage past oil and gas, and to create jobs. People who want this pipeline, or talk about this pipeline, they'll say to me things like, where you're going against progress. But I don't understand how 50 and 100-year-old technology could be considered progress. That's not progress. That's staying where you're at, right? Progress would be finding out a way to move forward and to continue to have your lights on and continue to have food on your table and continue to be able to clothe your children, but not destroy their air and their water and their legacy.
We are in Belrose, Louisiana, which is in Assumption Parish, and we are on the route of the Bayou Bridge pipeline. And this is Highway 308 immediately to our left, and just behind Highway 308 is Bayou Lafourche, which is the drinking water source for 300,000 Louisianans. And the Bayou Bridge pipeline is going to be put in underneath the bayou and within 50 feet of two other major pipelines that are already in the ground.
That's the drinking water source for 300,000 people. This bayou here. The orange and yellow flag, that's exactly the point where the Bayou Bridge pipeline, where they want to build that.
It's destroying our land. We lose a football field of land every hour here. Why do you think they're trying to get it to the Mississippi? Because all those tankers go out every day and take it right over there to China and right out to all of our so-called enemies out there into the world. If everybody's worried about being patriotic or being American, then maybe you ought to wonder where this oil is going and what it's going into. The other issue that we have is the Atchafalaya Basin. The Atchafalaya Basin is the largest natural swamp in North America. Probably the last bastion of true Cajuns, right? True Cajuns, right? That don't exist anywhere else in the world. And the indigenous populations too, down Bayou Lafourche and all that group from the Atchafalaya Basin all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico depend on good water for shrimp and especially good water for crawfish. They're the last of the wild-caught crawfishermen in that swamp. The way the pipelines have gone through the swamp, they're stopping the flow of oxygen to these traps. And not only are they destroying and killing the crawfish that are in the traps, but they're also killing a way of life that's happened for hundreds, if not thousands of years in South Louisiana.
A really important component of their pipeline too is that they're starting on indigenous land and they're going to end in a historic African American community. It's called Freetown. It was established by emancipated enslaved people who obviously did something really significant in founding a town. And yet this is the area that Energy Transfer Partners treats as its bullseye.
because the population is too poor to fight, because the population is black or brown, they move in all of this industry, whether it's chemical plants or refineries or whatever.
People are sick. People have respiratory problems, they have illnesses that I had never heard of before I started to work around here, and they have a lot of cancer. All kinds of cancer, all kinds of autoimmune illnesses, but the cancer is what stands out in some way because it's so prevalent, and it's why the area is called Cancer Alley.
This pipeline is going to exacerbate that because you're talking about more refining in that area where these people are, you know, the people who already suffer from asthma, little children with cancers, things like that. People that don't have an evacuation route, a way to even get out if something was to happen. We saw a chemical plant explode yesterday here, just right down the street. If that had been in St. James, Louisiana, those people would have what we call shelter in their homes. We call it die in your homes because that's what it is, really. It's basically you stay there until someone comes let you out. Some of these people are disabled. They couldn't get out even if they wanted to, right?
The giant cylinders, the white cylinders, those are tanks. One of the elements that makes St. James particularly an impacted community is the presence of multiple, what they call tank farms, which are just large collections of these infrastructure that are holding the oil and gas products. All of these petrochemical facilities are surrounded by sugarcane fields where there's food being grown, and literally the sugarcane comes up to the boundaries, the fences of the petrochemical facilities. There used to be white people living here, and all of the white people got buyouts.
Yes.
And there are basically no white people living here anymore. It's almost 100% black folks. Oh yeah, none of this was happening the last time I was out here.
This pipeline would go through 700 waterways, and there's people all up and down those waterways that are monitoring. They're making sure that everything's done according to the permit. They're reporting it if it's done wrong, and those are just as important water protectors as we are when we're out on the line doing direct action.
We are part of a citizen science monitoring group called the Louisiana Water Protectors. The objective of the pipeline monitoring is to identify permit violations that are being committed by the company, reporting them to regulatory agencies, ensuring that the regulatory agencies actually respond, publicizing the company's violations to the media, to elected officials, and most importantly to the public, and then using that documentation of violations to build an opposition movement to the pipeline.
Before construction began, we were canvassing right on the street, and people had no idea what was coming. They had not heard about it. The company absolutely did not reach out to directly impacted communities.
Our group has filed numerous violations, particularly related to sediment controls. This black mesh fencing here. So in Louisiana, in South Louisiana, we have very heavy rains that happen, and when there are not proper controls in place, there's erosion that moves the sediment that's exposed by the pipeline construction activities into ditches like this one. And that creates really serious problems leading to exacerbation of flooding, which is already a huge problem for communities like this that are below sea level and already heavily impacted by climate change related flooding. The company has in many places either failed to put up sediment controls like this fencing, or they've put it up but then it's been run over. But the regulatory agencies have responded by saying that oil and gas companies are exempt from stormwater management controls, which is a very technical and narrow interpretation of the permit, and there is potentially grounds for legal action.
The jobs on top of all that, 12 permanent jobs is all we're getting. So that's from their own mouth. From their own mouth, say 12 permanent. I guarantee you I've made more jobs just fighting this pipeline in security than those people are going to make for out of this pipeline, right? And the construction jobs, you go to any construction site and you see Texas, Mississippi, Arkansas, very few of those jobs have gone to people here in Louisiana.
If you want to destroy our precious Atchafalaya Basin, you're not going to get many locals who will agree to that. I mean, who wants to chop down a cypress tree that's hundreds of years old, that is the spirit of your own state? You know, you get some guy from Texas to do it. Our state is absolutely committed to jobs in the chemical plants and in the refineries and along the pipelines. These jobs are dirty, they're dangerous. In the oil industry, they're cyclical, right? You might be on a shift for 2 weeks out on a rig in the Gulf of Mexico and then come back, you know, for 2 weeks. You know, those jobs are really damaging for families.
I think the biggest wake-up call for us down here was when BP oil spill happened. Oil just spewing into the Gulf of Mexico. The first to die on BP was those oil workers, 11 of them, right? And the damage that was done to the fisher folk and continues to be for people's health down here.
Now, you're not going to find a lot of union workers because increasingly the oil industry have moved to contract labor, which of course is cheaper for them. People can be hurt and then the company isn't responsible for it. When oil prices go down, people get laid off. They have 26,000 abandoned oil wells in our Gulf of Mexico. That's a lot of jobs to go out there, you know, to cap those and to take care of them.
At one point, 70% of all the jobs in Lafayette, they depended on the oil industry. At last count, we're down to 30% of all the jobs in Lafayette that depend on the oil industry. But the problem is there's nothing coming in to take the place of those oil jobs because we've been so trained to be so committed to this one industry. One of our problems here in Louisiana is that the oil companies pay a lot of money to our governors and our senators and all that, right? And in return, those governors and those senators give our tax money to the oil companies in subsidies. South Louisiana can still power the entire nation. And we can do that. We've done it before. We have the welders. We have everything that's needed to create a beautiful, just transition, a beautiful economy that's based on renewable sources, that goes within the natural patterns of Mother Earth. And all that's standing in the way is $5,000 and $10,000 contributions that are going to these politicians. This whole camp is run by Indigenous women. We've been having prayers, having ceremonies with Indigenous leadership. That pipeline was set to go through this property, but when we opened this prayer camp and we put these prayer ties all along the front, all of a sudden the company moves over, which tells us that as long as we stay in, from our perspective, as long as we stay in prayer, as long as we are doing things in a nonviolent way, that we scared them enough that they actually will cost them millions of dollars to move.
What's significant about this pipeline in Louisiana, in a place where we have a lot of pipelines, is that it has brought people together to fight fossil fuel infrastructure in a way that I have not seen. And we owe a large debt to the resistance in Standing Rock, because what the Standing Rock Sioux did is show people that you can fight, that you should fight.
You can tell your sheriff this, every time that you take us, every single time, and if the rest is wrong, we will multiply. There will be hundreds of us. There will be thousands of us. You will not be able to move in this easement at all if you continue to do this. I highly suggest that your sheriff look really, really hard, not only at this legal, but into his heart, and realize that our heart is stronger, our prayers are stronger, and we will not be stopped. And you need to go tell him that, because we will sue the shit out of him for every single person of ours you take. Everyone, and every person you take will turn into freedom. Take it with you. But go now and take them too.